Tonight, before you go to sleep, you are probably going to do at least one thing that is quietly damaging your heart. Not tomorrow, not someday, tonight. Not because you are reckless, not because you do not care about your health, because nobody connected the dots for you, because the habits I am about to describe feel completely normal, completely harmless, completely responsible, and after 60, every single one of them is loading up cardiac risk that fires somewhere between midnight and 6 in the morning while you have no idea it is happening. I have seen the outcomes of these habits from the inside. I have reviewed the charts. I have had the conversations with families who could not understand how someone with no known heart problems simply did not wake up. And in case after case, the same pattern appears. The same 5 ordinary evening choices made by careful, health-conscious people who had simply never been told what those choices were doing while they slept. I have over 10 years of clinical experience, and today I am giving you the conversation those families wish had happened before it was too late. There are 5 nighttime habits that are directly linked to heart attacks and strokes in people over 60. By the end of this video, you will know all 5. You will know the biology behind each one, and you will have a specific protocol to start changing them tonight, not next week, tonight. The 5th one is the one that shocks people most. It is something almost everyone over 60 does. It feels completely innocent, and the research behind it, published in one of the most respected medical journals in the world just last year, is the kind of finding that should be on every doctor's wall. We are going to get there. Stay with me. Before I give you the 5 habits, you need to understand one thing about the night that most people never learn. Because without this foundation, you will hear these habits as inconveniences rather than dangers. Your heart does not rest when you fall asleep. It changes mode. In a healthy body, the night is when blood pressure drops naturally, roughly 10 to 20% below your daytime readings. Your heart rate slows, the arteries relax, inflammatory markers settle. This is called the nocturnal dip, and it is one of the most protective things your cardiovascular system does. It is when your heart actually recovers from the demands of the day. But after 60, this system becomes fragile in ways that nobody explains at a routine checkup. Blood vessels stiffen with age. The autonomic nervous system, the network that automatically regulates your heart rate and blood pressure, becomes less precise and less responsive. The hormonal signals that trigger that protective nighttime dip begin to weaken. The result is a much narrower margin for error. During the day, your cardiovascular system has backup mechanisms. It compensates. It adapts. At night, many of those mechanisms are offline. Think of it this way. During the day, your heart is running with a full crew. At night, it is running on a skeleton crew. And what you do in the 2 hours before you close your eyes determines whether that skeleton crew can hold things together until morning or cannot. Heart attacks and strokes do not occur randomly across the 24-hour clock. They cluster. Research consistently shows cardiovascular events peak between midnight and 6 in the morning, the precise window when the body is most vulnerable, most unmonitored, and most dependent on the choices you made before bed. The 5 habits I am about to describe are the ones that appear most consistently in the people who do not make it through that window safely, starting with the one that almost nobody connects to their heart. Habit 1. Eating a heavy meal within 2 to 3 hours of going to bed. I want you to think about last night. What time was dinner? What was on the plate? Because this single habit is one of the most underestimated stresses your heart faces all day, and most people have no idea. When you eat a large meal, your digestive system demands an enormous surge in blood flow. Your heart has to work significantly harder to meet that demand. Blood pressure rises, triglycerides, the fats circulating in your bloodstream, spike sharply in the 2 to 4 hours after a large meal. Now place that entire biological process on top of the moment your body is trying to transition into nighttime recovery mode. The 2 demands are in direct conflict. Your heart is simultaneously trying to manage the metabolic work of digesting a full dinner and shift into the restorative, low-demand state it needs to protect itself overnight. Studies published in cardiovascular research consistently show that eating within 2 to 3 hours of sleep is associated with elevated nighttime blood pressure, disrupted nocturnal dipping, and significantly increased cardiovascular risk during the sleeping hours. One study found that people who ate late and then went directly to bed were substantially more likely to show the dangerous non-dipping blood pressure pattern, the pattern most strongly associated with overnight heart attacks and strokes. The fix does not require a diet overhaul. Finish your main meal by 7s in the evening when possible. If you eat late, keep it genuinely light, protein and vegetables, not heavy fats and refined carbohydrates that spike blood sugar and demand sustained digestive effort through the night. What time did you eat dinner last night? Leave your answer in the comments. That question alone tells me more about a patient's overnight cardiac risk than almost anything else. I read every response. Habit 2. Taking your blood pressure medication at the wrong time. If you are among the more than 60% of adults over 60 who take medication for high blood pressure, what I am about to tell you is something your doctor may never have mentioned. Not because they do not care, but because a 7-minute appointment rarely reaches this level of detail. Most antihypertensive medications are taken in the morning. That is the habit. That is the convention. But here is the biological problem with that timing. Blood pressure follows a predictable daily curve. It rises through the morning, peaks in the afternoon, and is supposed to drop significantly at night. But a meaningful portion of people over 60, particularly those with hypertension, do not get that protective nighttime dip. Their pressure stays elevated through the night or surges in the early morning hours when the body is transitioning out of sleep. This condition is called nocturnal hypertension, and it is dangerous in a specific way that daytime high blood pressure is not. During sleep, your arterial walls are in a relaxed, vulnerable state. A pressure surge at 3 a.m. in the morning hits those walls differently than the same surge at 3 a.m. in the afternoon. It is significantly more likely to rupture a vulnerable plaque inside a coronary artery, more likely to trigger clot formation in a narrowed vessel, more likely to produce a stroke from a blood vessel that was already under strain. If you take your blood pressure medication only in the morning, its protective effect may be substantially diminished by the time midnight arrives, precisely when you need it most. The Hygia chronotherapy trial, one of the largest studies ever conducted on this specific question and involving over 19,000 patients followed for nearly 6 years, found that patients who took their blood pressure medication at bedtime had nearly 45% lower rates of heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular death compared to those who took the identical medications in the morning. Same drugs, same doses, different timing, almost half the cardiovascular risk. I want to be clear, do not change your medication schedule on your own. Some medications genuinely should not be taken at bedtime, diuretics in particular. This is a conversation your doctor must be part of, but asking specifically at your next appointment whether your blood pressure medication should be taken at night rather than in the morning, that 2-minute conversation could be the most important medical exchange you have this year. Write that question down before this video ends. Habit 3. Ignoring the sound coming from the other side of the bed. The loud, irregular, stop and start rumbling that your spouse elbows you over. The sound you wave away as annoying but harmless. I want you to stop treating it as harmless because after 20 years of reviewing cardiovascular cases, I no longer do. Obstructive sleep apnea is one of the most underdiagnosed and most underestimated conditions in adults over 60. It is estimated that over 30% of older adults have some form of it. The vast majority has never been evaluated or treated. They have no idea what is happening to their cardiovascular system every single night while they sleep. Here is what actually occurs during an apnea episode. You stop breathing for anywhere from 10 seconds to over a minute. Your blood oxygen level drops. Your brain registers a physiological emergency and fires an immediate stress response. Adrenaline surges, cortisol releases, and both your heart rate and blood pressure spike dramatically. Your cardiovascular system jolts into emergency mode, while the rest of you remains asleep. This can happen 30, 40, even 50 times in a single night. Every single episode is a cardiovascular stress event. Every single episode fires a pressure surge through arteries that are supposed to be resting. Across months and years, this pattern causes documented, measurable damage. It damages the endothelium, the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels. It accelerates arterial stiffening. It contributes to sustained hypertension, to plaque formation, to irregular heart rhythms. The American Heart Association directly links obstructive sleep apnea to higher rates of high blood pressure, stroke, coronary artery disease, and atrial fibrillation. The same irregular heart rhythm that is one of the leading causes of stroke in people over 60. Here is the statistic that should stop every person reading their resistant hypertension diagnosis in its tracks. Research suggests that up to 70 to 80% of patients with resistant hypertension, blood pressure that will not respond to 3 or more medications, have undiagnosed obstructive sleep apnea. Not as a coincidence, as the underlying cause. The blood pressure will never fully respond to medication if the trigger firing it dozens of times every night is never identified and treated. The warning signs are not always the obvious ones. Yes, loud snoring is one, but also watch for waking with a headache, feeling exhausted after a full night of sleep, needing to urinate frequently during the night, and waking with a dry mouth or a sensation of gasping. If any of those sound familiar, asleep. Study is not optional for your health. It is a fundamental part of your cardiac protection. Does anyone in your life snore heavily? Have you ever been told you stop breathing in your sleep? Think carefully before you move on from this one. Habit 4. Cutting your fluids off too early in the evening. This one surprises nearly every patient I describe it to because it is one of the most logical, careful, responsible feeling habits a person can have. And that is exactly what makes it dangerous. Many people over 60 deliberately limit how much they drink after dinner. The reasoning makes complete sense. They want to avoid waking at 2 in the morning to use the bathroom. Disrupted sleep is uncomfortable and exhausting. Falls at night carry real risk with age. So they cut fluids after dinner, sometimes as early as 4 in the afternoon. Sensible, disciplined, responsible. From a cardiovascular standpoint, going to bed even mildly dehydrated is a meaningful risk that almost nobody discusses. When you are dehydrated, your blood becomes more viscous, thicker. It does not flow as freely through your vessels. For a young cardiovascular system, mild dehydration is a manageable inconvenience that the body compensates for within minutes. For a person over 60 dealing with arterial stiffness, reduced vessel elasticity, and the early stages of narrowing, the picture is fundamentally different. Thick blood moves slowly through already compromised arteries. It is significantly more prone to forming clots, and clot formation at 3 in the morning in an artery that has been narrowing for years is exactly how a stroke or heart attack begins in a person who went to bed feeling completely fine. The compounding problem is the timing. During sleep, your heart rate naturally slows, and blood moves more slowly through the system anyway. Now, combine slow circulation with thicker, more viscous blood in a body that has been lying still for 7 or 8 hours. That combination, dehydration, slow heart rate, reduced movement, and vessel disease, is one of the primary biological reasons cardiovascular events cluster in the early morning hours. The solution is one of the simplest in this entire video. Drink a full 8 oz glass of water before bed. Not a large volume that will disrupt your sleep, just 1 glass. Enough to ensure your blood is not thickening unnecessarily during the most vulnerable hours of the night. Keep another glass on your nightstand. Your body asking you quietly at 2 in the morning is your heart asking for the same thing. Habit 5. And this is the one I told you about at the start. The one that appears more consistently than any other when I review cases of overnight cardiac events in people over 60. The one that feels so completely innocent that most people genuinely laugh when I raise it. Sleeping with the light on. Or, more specifically, sleeping with any meaningful source of artificial light in your bedroom. A television left on after you fall asleep. A bright digital alarm clock. Light coming through uncovered windows from a street lamp or a neighbor's house. The ambient glow of a phone you left face up on the nightstand. I know exactly how that sounds. Stay with me because the research behind this is not marginal or preliminary. It is substantial, large-scale, and published in JAMA Network Open, one of the most rigorous peer-reviewed medical journals in the world. A 2025 study tracked nearly 89,000 adults over the age of 40 for 9.5 years. Participants wore wrist sensors that measured their personal nighttime light exposure, how much light they were actually exposed to between 12:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning. Researchers then tracked cardiovascular outcomes across the following decade. The findings were striking and have since been discussed at the highest levels of cardiovascular medicine. Compared to people who slept in the darkest conditions, those exposed to the highest levels of nighttime light had a 47% higher risk of heart attack, a 56% higher risk of heart failure, a 32% higher risk of coronary artery disease, and a 28% higher risk of stroke. These associations held firm even after the researchers adjusted for physical activity, diet, smoking status, sleep duration, socioeconomic status, and every other established cardiovascular risk factor. The light exposure was an independent risk factor, standing alone, separate from everything else. The mechanism runs through your body's circadian rhythm, not just the sleep cycle. The circadian rhythm governs blood pressure patterns, heart rate variability, cortisol secretion, platelet activation, inflammatory markers, and the tension inside your arterial walls. Your body reaches peak sensitivity to light stimulus between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning. Exposure to light during that window, even low-level ambient light from a television you fell asleep in front of, sends a signal to your body's master clock that daylight is arriving. Blood pressure, which should be dropping into its protective nighttime dip, stays elevated or begins to rise earlier than it should. Stress hormones, which should be settling, remain partially activated. The protective cardiovascular recovery that the night is supposed to provide does not happen. And night after night, the cumulative damage accumulates invisibly while you sleep. I want to tell you about Gerald, 68 years old, retired electrician, never in hospital. Last checkup 6 months before he died. Doctor said he was doing fine. He went to bed on a Tuesday night the same way he had gone to bed for 30 years. Watched the news, left the television on as he fell asleep, said goodnight to his wife. He never woke up. His wife told me about the television when I reviewed his case. That habit of 30 years. And I cannot tell you with certainty that the television caused his cardiac event. Medicine is never that simple. What I can tell you is that every one of the 5 habits I have described in this video was present in Gerald's evening routine. Every single one. And I have seen that pattern enough times now that I can no longer call it coincidence. Let me bring this together because I want you leaving with something specific you can act on before you sleep tonight. 5 habits. All 5 documented contributors to overnight cardiovascular risk in people over 60. All 5 changeable starting this evening. Eating a heavy meal late forces your heart to work through the night instead of recover. Wrong medication timing leaves your blood pressure unprotected during the hours when a pressure surge causes the most arterial damage. Undiagnosed sleep apnea triggers dozens of cardiovascular stress events every night, firing adrenaline surges through a heart that is supposed to be resting. Going to bed dehydrated thickens your blood at the precise moment clot formation risk is highest. And sleeping with light exposure disrupts the circadian signals that regulate blood pressure, heart rate, and vascular recovery during sleep. None of these require surgery. None require a new prescription. All 5 can begin changing tonight. Here is your protocol for this evening. Finish your main meal at least 3 hours before bed. Drink a full glass of water before you lie down. Check your bedroom right now. Is there a television that stays on? A bright clock? An uncovered window? Make it as dark as you can make it. And at your next doctor's appointment, ask 2 specific questions. Whether your blood pressure medication should be taken at night rather than the morning, and whether you should be evaluated for sleep apnea. That is it. 5 habits identified, 5 changes available. Starting tonight. Gerald's wife asked me once whether there was anything he could have done differently. I told her honestly that I cannot know. But I also told her that every single habit I described above was woven into his evenings for decades. And I have had enough of those conversations now that I make sure nobody I can reach has them without this information first. You are not Gerald. You are watching this video. You now have what he did not have. The question is what you do with it tonight. Tell me in the comments, which of these 5 habits did you not know was connected to your heart? And which one are you changing this evening? I read every single comment, and your answer genuinely shapes what I cover next. If this video gave you something that could protect the people you love, share it. Not for this channel, for For the person in your life who falls asleep in front of the television every single night without knowing what that is doing to their heart while they sleep, that share may matter more than you realize. Subscribe for more honest conversations about protecting your health after 60. Next time, we are going to cover the 5 blood pressure medications most commonly prescribed to older adults and the specific cardiac side effects that almost nobody is warned about at prescription time. You will want to hear that before your next medical review. One final thing. Everything shared here is based on published clinical research and my experience over the past decade. Your situation is specific to you. Do not change or stop any medication without talking to your own doctor first. That conversation, informed, direct, and unhurried, is where good decisions begin. Take exceptional care of your heart. It has been working for you every single minute of every single night without ever asking for anything in return. Give it 5 good changes starting tonight. I will see you in the next one.